World War II Notes Part III. So again, after Poland is invaded by Germany, alliances are formed. Again, it's a not again situation, but that's the way it broke down. You have the Allied powers versus the Axis powers, just like with World War I. You need to make sure you know exactly who was on the Allied powers, who was on the Axis powers, and understand that Soviet Union is going to at first be on the Axis powers because of their non-aggression pact with Soviet Union, but then of course the Soviet Union will be invaded and switch, along with the United States getting into the war later. Tens of millions are going to die. This is a war, after all. With Eastern Europe, the new form of warfare that's specific to World War II is the Blitzkrieg. Within 10 days, and that's not a typo, within 10 days, Poland is divided between Russia and Germany. That's all the longer it took to invade and take over. Blitzkrieg is lightning war, where again you got the dense concentration of armored tanks, followed up by troops, backed up by close air support. Just basically goes in and strikes quicker than folks can blink, if you will. And essentially, the Germans are going to lay it down like this: either you surrender, or we're going to come in and we're going to attack. So lots of countries are, after they see Poland and the devastation that was caused in that 10 days, are going to back down and just turn over control to the Germans. Poland is attacked and set up to be the symbol for how exactly Germany is going to do it. They go in and they obliterate everything. They leave nothing standing, and essentially this is on purpose so that they can show the other countries, look, we're serious, this can happen to you, or you can just turn over control to the Germans, and it works in their favor. And that, of course, is Blitzkrieg. Also, one of the terms that you might want to pay attention to in this unit is the Maginot Line. It's a series of fortifications along the border of Germany and France that the French thought would keep the Germans out. However, the French just took, again, the easy way out. You should know that they went around the Maginot Line fortifications and just went through, you know this, Belgium. Yes, if you said Belgium, then you were right. They just went through Belgium, cut off the border there, and invaded France anyway. The Maginot Line, again, fails to protect the border between France because it doesn't extend all the way up to Belgium. They stopped when they got to the Belgian border, so absolutely no help there. Germany attacks Holland, Germany attacks Holland, then Belgium, and then goes into France. And pretty soon France is going to fall. And this is where we get into something called the Vichy Regime. If you recall back in World War I, they had a famous general, again, Pétain, I'm probably mispronouncing his name crazily there, but Marshal Pétain, he is going to be one of the war heroes of World War I. Unfortunately, during World War II, he is now one of the lead commanders. He's going to essentially back out of the war and allow Germans to come in and control. We'll see more about him on the next slide. The British military is going to be spared only because they evacuated Dunkirk. And the reason why this one is highlighted and underlined is the fact that there are some pretty staggering pictures out there about the soldiers leaving Dunkirk, and any ship of any kind, large or small, that could evacuate soldiers went to retrieve the British soldiers and get them out of France and take them back to Great Britain as they evacuated and went back to the island. So again, the next stop is going to be Great Britain itself. A word about the Vichy government. Again, this Marshal Pétain, he's going to be the savior of France in World War I, but when Germany invades, it essentially embarrasses him. France was supposed to have the best army of the time after World War I, and so he's going to create this authoritarian regime once they've been defeated, called the Vichy Regime, or this authoritarian government. And essentially he collaborates with the Germans. He cuts a deal. He says, listen, if you don't divide up France, then you can keep I think it was a couple million soldiers, French soldiers. We'll round up all the Jewish and other undesirables and send them over to you. And it's going to be a backlash against, and eventually there's going to be a backlash against Vichy France for collaborating with the enemy. You can't see the with the enemy part down there on your line. So no one, a lot of the French are not very happy with the government, with Vichy, with Pétain, and Vichy government becomes sort of a dirty word of the French, for the French during the World War II. Charles de Gaulle. If you've ever flown into France, you probably flew into the Charles de Gaulle airport. So he is a big hero in France, and that is largely in part due to his involvement in World War II. Because the Vichy government was so down and dismal and collaborated with the enemy, Charles de Gaulle is going to be this charismatic soldier. He didn't have a defeatist attitude, which again basically means you think you're defeated before you've even fought. He was more of an optimist, and he calls for French soldiers from the colonies to come in and form a new French army, one that's going to stand up against the British. He wants to retrieve their national honor back. And he's going to be labeled by a traitor by the Vichy regime, and essentially he and his French resistance, the Maquis, which I'm probably butchering the word there, he and his French resistance are not only going to be fighting the Germans, but also the Vichy government. So Charles de Gaulle earns his name during World War II. Heading back over to Great Britain, I told you earlier that the Prime Minister, Neville Chamberlain, after his epic fail at the Munich conference, was replaced. He was replaced by Winston Churchill. And the Germans, especially Hitler, strongly anticipated peace negotiations between Great Britain. They thought Great Britain really wasn't going to be much of a problem, that they were Aryan brothers in nature, or Aryan brothers, and had this relationship. But the British Prime Minister had other ideas. He thought that that Germany needed to be stopped, and he was more of a had more of a backbone, if you will. He was ready to stand up to Hitler. So he was the perfect Prime Minister for Great Britain at that time, because this is going to be one of those things that really shapes how the war is going. If Chamberlain had stayed in power, who knows what would have happened? Maybe the British would be speaking German today. But he's going to be resolute against resolute on how to deal with Germany, and I've got a couple quotes up there. He says, I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat, that we're not going to give in, and he's got that little quote there, wage war against, he's standing before the House of Commons saying, essentially making his argument about actually waging war with Germany, continuing the fight. We have to wage war against monstrous tyranny, never surpassed in the dark, lamentable catalogue of human crime. So he acknowledged that they were one of the worst governments, the worst anti-human regime that they had ever seen, and that they needed to be stopped. In 1940, the Battle of Britain is an air bombing campaign. We're going to take a look on the next slide about it. Campaign by Hitler and his Luftwaffe. Again, I apologize if I'm butchering that one, German people. And the part that you can't see is it was bravely fought by the British with the help of radar. Air bombing campaign by Hitler, bravely fought by the British with the help of radar. So you got the details of the battle there. Yes, radar was instrumental because the British planes actually had better planes, not plans. The British planes, not British plans, they had better planes than the Germans did, but the Germans had more planes, and essentially radar helped them to gauge where the next attack would be. Also, Great Britain didn't know that, Germany did not know that the British had cracked their secret military code. It is also important to note here, even though the screen kind of dips out a little bit, the German Air Force is led by a drug-addicted and incompetent leader, Hermann Göring. Hermann Goring. Looks like go ring. Goring. Hermann Göring. So, eventually, Great Britain's, in the beginning, Great Britain is going to be bombed continually in their air force and military bases, but then the Germans are going to turn their attentions to just bombing random cities, and this is, of course, what's known as the Blitz. Once they realize that this just isn't going to work after the Battle of Britain, they refocus their goals on Russia. So, even though they had signed this non-aggression pact, the Nazi-Soviet pact with Russia, Hitler turns his sights towards Russia. There's very few questions about the Holocaust. I could spend a month on the Holocaust myself in class, just going over things and putting together some really awesome lessons, but from what I've heard from you guys, you already had a teacher who did that in 7th or 8th grade. And the bottom line is the AP exam doesn't spend too much time on it. They talk about it in generalities. And so here are a few things that you want to focus on for our test. Just a reminder that anti-Semitism is at the heart of Nazi ideology. It's really what separates their level and their degree of anti-Semitism. It's what separates them from Mussolini and other fascists. Nuremberg laws are prior to World War II. It's a set of laws that are going to deprive citizenship and force Jews and force them to wear the yellow Star of David. You cannot date or marry, have relations with the Jewish community or a Jew, or it was against the law. So again, those sets of laws that really start to separate the Jewish community from the Germans. Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. Jewish stores and Jewish homes are going to be broken. Synagogues are going to be broken into, all in one huge campaign. That again really starts to show what the atmosphere is like in Germany, and what the attitudes of the Germans are really like, at least the ones in charge, and the secret police and the military, and some of the community as well. Remember, there's been a huge propaganda campaign for years, in the interwar years, and anti-Semitism for thousands of years, but a lot of people have grown up with books that show the Jewish community as being less than human, and the cause for the economic situation and the loss of World War I. So there was a big part of the community that really blamed the Jewish community for all of their woes after World War I. And Hitler capitalizes on this. Bottom line is significance. It proves that the Germans are interested in eliminating, the Germans are interested in eliminating the Jews. That they're moving to a more militant, more aggressive, more deadly form of separation of the Jewish community. We also get into, what to do with the Jewish question. What are we going to do with all these people that are here and on our territories? When they take over Poland, largest concentration of the Jews. That's why you see a lot of concentration camps, especially the most deadly ones are in Poland, with Krakow, because of the high Jewish population in Poland. You see the whole idea of the final solution in the last year and a half of the war, where in the 6 years leading up to the final solution, the concentration camps were set up, they were running, but at that point they were still more like a intense labor camp that did often kill people, and they of course were still running the crematoriums. If you weren't going to be a good worker, then you would go there. But towards the end of the war, the last year and a half, when Hitler really starts to realize that he's not going to probably win, he institutes the final solution. And there's lots of documentation on this, where again it's just eliminate everyone. We're not even going to pretend at this point that this isn't what we were setting out to do. So all pretenses are gone, and the just complete slaughtering of anyone in the concentration camps is ordered, especially the last couple months as the Russians and the US and British are closing in.